go ahead and get started. So everyone, thank you for joining us and Happy New Year. It's great to see you guys again. Many of you guys, familiar faces. If you're brand new to this, welcome, welcome. So for the first session that we have for this year, it's really important. We're going to be talking about building resumes that get interviews. So we're going to give you a little bit of an in scoop of, what is a good resume. And also we're going to give you a little bit of first insight of how AI you can incorporate it and helping you craft a resume. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, and as you guys know, my name is Francisco Siganan. I'm the team lead here at AlliedUP career coaching team, and I have also here my fellow coaches, Krista Shambly and Kirsten Jensen. All right, so for this year, we really want to dig deep in resumes. So, if you're a 2024 graduate and you feel like this year you really want to go for it, you want to make that career change, this is a great webinar for you guys to go ahead and join. And one of the key things that we're going to be talking about resumes is how are they attractable to ATS systems. And many of you are probably wondering, what is an ATS system? So as you guys know, technology keeps changing. It's always going to change. And nowadays it's a little bit more different. There's really not a lot of these companies, what they use an ATS system to scan the resume, to see if you're compatible for it. It's not like how it was before a few years back when there was someone actually sitting at the desk, reviewing resumes, going through, paper to paper. Now it's a little bit different. So we kind of want to make the resume stand out a little bit more. We're going to give you, some helpful tips on how can you do that. It goes from the knowledge of the job, the title, the positions, do you acquire the assets for this job? You want to make sure that you qualify for the job. What you've done the job or where you've done the job. You want to add on that resume your employment history, your any externships, any volunteer work that you've had. That's very important to definitely want to showcase that in a resume. And lastly, your success at the job, responsibilities that you've done there. What I like to see in your guys' resumes is your guys' accomplishments of what you've done there. Like for example, if you're a phlebotomist, you definitely want to mention that you did maybe in a day, 60, 70 Benny punctures in a day. That's something you definitely want to showcase. So these are things that can definitely help your resume. All right, so fun part. So AI, Chat GPT. So many of you probably wonder, how can I start off this resume? Or how am I compatible to this position? So one cool thing that you can do with ChatGPT is, for example, here in the screen. So I have an urgent care medical assistant position for Carbon Health. Um, I want to see if I'm compatible for this position, but let's say my resume is not up to date. Maybe, I don't have any skills on there, or I don't know what to add to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this job description and let me share my screen with you guys. I'm going to go in ChatGPT, paste it, and I'm asking ChatGPT, analyze the job description and list the top skills mentioned. Go ahead and hit paste. And it's going to already let me know that this position is looking for patient care, assisting with procedures, medication administration, technical skills. You always want to make sure that you're compatible to these jobs because who knows, maybe you've performed these in your externship. Maybe some of you guys are, past caregivers, worked in facilities like that. Maybe these skills are something that you've done and you definitely 100% want to go ahead and add it to your resume. I think this is a really cool tool to use, especially if you're not really familiarized or really don't know in what direction you want to go with your resume or don't know, what skills does, this job description need or do they want to see. So this would be your top, top things to do, it's super helpful. And then down along the line, everyone, we are going to go ahead and have like a webinar on how to fully function, with AI. So that's one of the good things that you definitely, I highly suggest using it. And if you have any questions with that, reach out to one of your coaches. We can definitely go ahead and show you how to do that. So let me go back to here.
And going along with that, aligning aligning your resume to the job that you're applying to. Don't lie about your background, but this would really help kind of give you some pointers of maybe some skills that you haven't even thought about that are needed for that job. That, when you do the chat GPT or the AI analysis, it kind of gives you an, aha, yeah, I have worked it with, special needs children like it's asking for. Sometimes it's very specific to that job. Like I said, don't lie, but maybe it would give you some ideas of what things you've done previously that would help kind of put you above the rest.
Exactly. Because remember, your skills always kind of want to match the job description. I'm sure you guys heard it before. You want your resume to reflect 75% to what you're applying for. And this tool can really kind of open your eyes and see like, maybe this is a role that I can actually apply to, and or even that hey, maybe I need to take some additional, schooling certifications, or start in another position in healthcare and make my way up. This is a really, really helpful tool that I highly suggest. And again, like I mentioned, if you need help with this, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to assist you with that. All right, and then next slide, I am gonna go ahead and send it over to Kirsten. Kirsten, take it away, please.
You know, so, your resume, it can be daunting. You have, depending on if you're starting out your career or, are switching up your career, you might have a lot that you want to add, or you might not have a whole lot. So that's what we're here to assist with you. So definitely when you are, including your resume, you definitely, I mean, the number one thing here is your header that has your name and the contact information to be able to get a hold of you. I was having a coaching session today, and we discussed how, when you're putting in your header, you do want to put in, your phone number, your email. Make sure that your email is a professional email. Just make sure it's not, something that you'd be embarrassed, like something you created in junior high. Try to make it as professional as possible, first, last name if you can. And then, putting your phone number, but also putting your city, state, and zip. You don't want to put in your full address just for privacy issues. There's enough possibility of people being able to get all of your your information out there. You want to try to keep your resume to, protect your privacy. When you fill out a job application, that's when you can put in your actual physical address, but your resume might be passed around just for safety. You just want to just put city, state, and zip. Typically, you would start off, you would have your header, and then you would have the job title that you're applying for: medical assistant, EKG tech, and then typically a little quick summary talking about, your background and how it aligns to the job that you are applying for. But let's say you are a medical assistant and you're applying for a medical receptionist. You would change that job title to the job title that you are applying to. So make sure that, you're always constantly tweaking your resume, if that job is a little bit different than the previous jobs that you've applied for. Education, license, and certification. I know some of you are still waiting for, maybe you've submitted your paperwork and you know that you're going to be getting, you've been, approved of your certification, but you're just waiting for that to come. You can just add that in there. It's not lying if you're just waiting for that physical piece of paper. You don't want to ever lie on your resume, but like if you know that's coming and you want to just get out there and start applying for jobs, that is okay. You want to always have your education, your experience going from the most recent to the oldest. So like when you if you just finished up a certification or your Futuro school, that would be the first thing to go up on your education. And then, you would go with the stuff that is later in your, like previously. And then you would go into your experience. And when you're talking about your experience, put down your jobs that you've had. If it's been, typically the rule of thumb is it's within the last 10 years, put it on your resume. If it really, if you're switching careers and you've been in a job for 30 years, put that in there. We really want to make sure that you're showcasing all of your valuable experience, regardless from what industry you came, to be able to showcase how great of a worker you are, because I think what we're hearing a lot is those soft skills are what they're really looking for when you're applying for a job, is making sure that your communication skills are there, that your time management skills, that you're going to be on time, that once you're done with a task, you're going to look for another task to complete instead of go on your phone. So these are stuff that as you're showcasing your previous experience, you can showcase those transferable skills. You can also, under experience, add if you've had an externship, because that is work that you've done. It's not necessarily, it's not paid work in some cases, but that also showcases you've had that hands-on experience with your externship. Relevant skills. Like I said, communication, patient care, those are really, great things to have, but also, showcasing that specific, taking vitals, monitoring, being able to put in information into Epic. Basically, in Cisco showed you in the last slide how you could also, leverage ChatGPT to see if there's anything different in that job description about skills that they want in those positions. And then think about it like, oh, have I done this before? Even if it's something where, they're talking about, if you're a receptionist and they're talking about, handling money, and you worked at, let's say, a fast food restaurant, that is something that is transferable. You have handled a cash register in a previous job, and then there you go. It might not be the same exact type of job, exact type of cash register, but those are still, skills that you could be using in all different types of jobs. And then, volunteer work and awards. Just being able to speak to if you've, volunteered at, a hospice center, or, as a, just at anything, even if it's at, a dog shelter, being able to showcase, because that's something that would set you apart, even if it might not align to the job that you're applying for. Volunteer work and being involved in your community is something that, a lot of people are looking for, people that really are invested in the community that they are applying for. And definitely awards always showcases, your commitment to whatever you were doing. Don't plagiarize. Don't just copy and paste a resume off the internet. Don't just ask ChatGPT to write you a resume. ChatGPT is a great resource, but I mean, I've seen some resumes that clearly somebody wrote, right? Resume for a medical assistant, because none of the background matched their background. And so a recruiter will see that. So you just want to be, get inspiration maybe from others, but, be very committed to crafting your own resume. And that's something that we are here to assist you with. You want to go to the next slide, Cisco?
Yes, definitely. I'm gonna add to that too about like the
Yes.
whole ChatGPT. It is a great tool, but like to what Kirsten said, don't copy and paste it, because yes, it's a good tool, but it might elaborate your resume a little bit too much and not make it believable. And a recruiter is gonna be like, okay, there's no way that this resume, reflects that. So great tool, but always proofread it, or just like she mentioned,
Mhm.
get inspiration from it.
Yeah, and
So
it's always, for me, like a lot of times, like if I'm having writer's block, this is a great way for me to start crafting, an idea for a summary, but definitely keeping it my own, and, taking ownership. So, just it's a great resource. It's a great tool to use, but just don't throw something in there and, expect it to come up with something that sounds like your voice. You always want to have ownership over your resume. And like we said, it's a great tool, but, we sometimes ChatGPT can embellish a lot, especially if you give it free reign. So you want to be able to, really be able to use it as a tool to assist, and not to, take over your resume. So going into what you should not have on your resume, I know that I've been receiving some resumes that have a picture of your, like a selfie, or, even some like different graphic designs. That is not something that is used in resumes. I know that they're in different countries. I know like Europe, a lot of times their CVs ask for a picture, but here that you don't want to put on a picture, because you don't want to have an implicit bias, fall into, with the recruiter looking at your resume. Also, a lot of times if there are, text boxes or photographs, it might not be able to get processed through the applicant tracking system. And so it automatically boots your resume out without even having a recruiter look at it. So we really want to make sure that, your resume is as simple and clean and concise as possible. So like I said, no pictures, no graphics, text boxes. You don't really want to use those, because like I said, it can't scan it correctly. So it might just boot it out, might not see what you have in there. If you have a skills section in there, it might not see it and think you don't have these skills for the job. You're automatically disqualified. The scales and the graphics, I've seen some that I don't know if like Indeed has a profile that sets it up where you say your skills and it says like, you're 50% communication or 75 or, excels at this. You just want to have it simple. You don't want to rate yourself. Just, okay, you have communication skills. You're going to have that. You don't want to have like a rating system on your resume. Just because, if you're putting a skill on there, you should be confident that you have ownership over that skill and you're very confident with it. Irrelevant skills or irrelevant information that does not align should be out of there. We're focusing on the job that you're applying for. Sometimes I've seen some applications have a little thing on the bottom like, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Keep it kind of focused into the job, not like, oh, I'm really super into, Minecraft or whatever. You want to really focus in on the job. Along with, irrelevant skills, Microsoft Office, Google Suites, those are all kind of, pretty mainstream at this point. So that's not something that really sets you apart and showcases your skill set in the healthcare industry. You should not have any references to begin with on your resume. It is always good to have a running, list of 3 or 4 people you could be calling upon for a reference, and those definitely should not be friends or family. If you're starting out, you haven't had previous work, typically those should be like previous instructors or teachers or, mentors. And then, when you've already had, several jobs under your belt, those should be, previous supervisors, coworkers, people to speak to your work ethic. And yet, like I said, again, not your your full home address, because you just want to be as safe as possible when you're getting this information out there. A lot of times, when you're putting your resume on Indeed, a lot of times that your resume can be viewed by whatever recruiter has access to, like Indeed Recruiter. So you really just want to make sure that your resume just showcases your great skills and, none of this irrelevant stuff that could possibly get you passed over. And now our coach Krista is going to actually dive in and do a actual resume review for all of us. So you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Team, if you could let me know when it's visible, I'd appreciate that.
It's starting. There it
Perfect.
is. Yep, we're good.
Awesome. All right, everyone. So this is our resume here, and I'm going to need some help from you all in the audience to help me identify some of the things that maybe shouldn't be on here, some of the things that are maybe missing, or areas of improvement based on what we discussed, what Coach Francisco and Kirsten did. So starting out with this top part, go ahead and type in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. Is there anything here that you see that stands out that maybe could be improved or something that might be missing?
Could you zoom out a little bit so we could
Yes.
kind of see? Thank you.
Contact information. Yes, we have the contact information on here. Do you notice anything about the contact information that might not be needed? Correct. Yes. So the street address is on here. So we can just remove this street address and then leave the city, state, and zip. And then we have a phone number. But what else are we missing? The lines are distracting. Email, correct. Yes, and the font size as well. We definitely want to make sure that contact info is very visible. So we could bold this, we can make it a little bit bigger. Everyone's definitely noticing the lines and the borders. Those are kind of, they probably chop up a little bit in the applicant tracking system. What about this objective? Do we feel like this is an impactful objective? Do we feel like it showcases the successes and skills that Jane has possessed? No? You want to talk about that a little bit, James?
It it sounds a little bit generic.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we can certainly take this a step further, and thank you for sharing. So definitely if we can showcase anything um about this candidate that was they did at their externship that was above and beyond, any accomplishments like, getting through, like Coach Francisco said earlier, a certain amount of vinipunctures per day, that sort of thing. So great. Thank you, James. And what do we think about this skill section here? I'm noticing that there are only a couple of skills on here. Do we think we should add more?
Or maybe clarify.
Absolutely. Doing some clarification here. We also recommend moving that skills section to the bottom because the education and the experience, it's all a little bit more info and more important than the skills section that'll be used primarily for keywords, for the applicant tracking system. That's where you can change up the skills based on what ChatGPT suggests when you compare that job description to your resume. Yes, Michael was right on it. Skills section could go last. Nancy, more details and specifics. Yes, this is a very generic, very general resume. This looks a lot like any other resume and would not stand out very well amongst the other resumes that are submitted. So let's talk about this education and certificate section over here. Do we notice anything that's missing?
Should the address for the education be presented?
So it could. Sometimes, depending on the college, the name of the city or the location might be in the name, which would mean it's not necessary to provide that address. But what I don't see here is a graduation date, or any indication of what education this individual got, only the college name. What about the certificates? Is there enough info here?
No dates.
Yes, exactly. No dates. We do not have the dates. We don't have, this doesn't really clarify. Is this your medical assistant certification? Is this a certificate of completion from your school? And so on jobs that require national or state certification, you might get passed up for this role because you don't have that specified. Also providing the certifying body. So, for example, for basic life support, it might be American Heart Association. Perfect. And then just wrapping up here, how do we feel about this experience section? Do we think that there's enough info?
I personally would suggest bullet points over having everything kind of jammed in there. Easier to scan.
100%. Yeah. So, if it gets to the applicant tracking system and it goes to the recruiter, they're not going to spend a very long time reading through your resume. So it's really important that everything is super to the point. It's clear, it's organized, and it's not all smushed together like this. I'm also noticing a really big part that was left out for this individual who completed a medical assistant program. Does anyone know what might be missing here? It's really, really important.
Where she worked.
Yes, well, we have where she worked on here, but you're headed in the right direction. It's a part of the medical assistant program. Come on, guys.
I discussed it should be in your experience when I talked about relevant experience.
Internship, externship. Yes, Priscilla, you got it. So yeah, we want to make sure we're including that externship on here. Right now, it doesn't show that RJ Doe has any work experience as a medical assistant at all. So we want to make sure we're adding that on here and really speaking to the skills and abilities that you do. And for those of you who might be in externships right now, I want to remind you to jot down all the amazing things that you're doing, compliments that you're receiving, successes that you have, so that when you meet with us for your resume review, we're able to add that all in there and really showcase your success. Awesome. All right. Does anybody have any questions about this resume or any additional comments?
I do want to add one thing. Everyone, you see how on the experience sheet, Jane Doe just wrote down overseeing daily operations, managing staff. Well, how much staff does she manage? We want to know, maybe she managed a team of 60, 70 people on her own. She oversaw their daily operations. That's stuff that she should have definitely mentioned. A recruiter could have been like, oh, wow, Jane did that. That's stuff that definitely can highlight, your resume and the skills that you've done. So, with job descriptions, definitely think of it as adding accomplishments as well.
Yes. And show impact. If there's any way that you can show impact beyond overseeing daily operations, how can you convey to them what exactly you did when you were overseeing daily operations? What were the daily operations? It's always good to take it a step further. That's what's going to make your resume stand out.
I had a question.
Absolutely.
My question is in regards to gaps in work. Like, how do you go about like explaining gaps or career change type of thing?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to pass this one to Coach Kirsten because we just had a conversation about this recently. Would you like to share?
Yes, yeah. So when it comes to career gaps, sometimes it depends, like if it's education, they can see that you were going to school during that time. So a lot of times, like that's not something that you would explain on your resume because those dates would align with your career gap. If it is something that you were taking time off to, take care of ill family member or raise children, you would add that in experience. You can add that and then align it with, maybe like self-employed and, actually doing bullet points about what you did during the day, because, those really aren't like, I mean, those are unpaid career gaps, but those are still like, you're still working, you're still doing stuff. Same with like that education. So, you'd be able to fill that, during that time. A lot of times, like, if it's like a couple of years ago during COVID, no one really asks, if there's a career gap during, 2020, 2021. But like most recently, if there is, you can fill that in. Like, let's say you were a caregiver for a family member that, wasn't able to take care of themselves. You can put that in as experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach Kirsten.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and put all our information out there. This is, the end of our webinar. I really do hope you guys did take up some great tips from our webinar from today. And then remember, reach out to us. I know some of you just recently completed it last year, November, December, holidays hit. I'm sure, now you guys want to get back into it. So, reach out to it if you have any questions with your resumes or, just want an extra pair of eyes to look at it. Please reach back to you have our information out there, and then I believe Coach Kirsten's gonna go ahead and put it in the chat as well, and that way you guys can go ahead and reach out to us.
I put in all three of our links into the chat so you could be able to schedule a time with us. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have time for individual questions, but we are here to be able to support you. And please schedule a time for us if we haven't spoken for an initial conversation, or if we have and you're still struggling with your job search, reach out to your coach so we could be able to support you more.
All right, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And then, this concludes our first webinar for 2025. We'll be giving you guys an update for next month's webinar. So thank you, everyone. You guys have a good one, and, reach out to us as you guys need us. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thanks for joining.